Go ahead, got that. Start the recording. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to the podcast feed, we are just getting the YouTube live feed set up, and I believe we are set to go. We are live on YouTube. Let me just get the link going, link out there. Of course, the internet decides to be slow today.
Whenever you want it to work.
Yeah, usually. Okay, that's that. We're gonna go here. Gonna paste, we're gonna post, and we
All right.
are live.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Squared Circle News. I am Vinnie, and my special guest this week is Matt from 10th Floor Podcasts.
Hi.
Matt, how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me here to the squared circle.
Absolutely, no, it's good to have you here. It's always good to talk to people that do like soap operas and wrestling because, as you know, I do like both, and the genres are very similar.
I mean, yeah, it's very fun to see the similarities. I find it's a little easier to apply wrestling to soaps than soaps to wrestling, but I
Yes.
totally get it.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Although I will say that I do go ahead and use a lot of wrestling terminology when it comes to
Yeah.
so talking
Well,
about the
yeah,
soap.
I'm guilty of making the reference on the 10th floor podcast too. So,
Yeah.
I don't blame you on that. And I remember a long time ago, something that one of the first things that we talked about was
Mhm.
when I noticed, your connection between, because at the time you're doing Suds and the Squared Circle at the same
Yeah.
time in the same
Right.
in the same broadcast. And I'm like, you need to assign champions, man. You need to pick like a women's champion on GH and
Yeah.
stuff.
It's true. No, it really is true. And it's funny because we've had so many, they don't do as many fights as they used to do,
No.
on General Hospital, but we did have a small sort of cat fight with Trina and Esme a
Right.
couple of weeks back on the boat in France. So I mean that was cool. I wish I had the sound clip of Joey Styles yelling cat
Oh
fight.
my God. Catfight.
Um, but either way, so we are here. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. To get into
Yeah.
some current wrestling stuff. We'll get into some, we're going to be talking about a WWE Hall of Famer that I've never been a really huge fan of, Bret Hart. Um, and that's, it is what it is with me. It's like I could recognize Bret Hart, his,
Yeah.
athleticism in the ring. But I've never been a huge fan of his, and it might be more of a timing thing for
I
me.
think that's probably what it is. Um, so I mean, my guest spot here on Suds is because you had said something. Bret Hart had talked about the Vince McMahon scandal in some
Yeah,
way, and you said, "Oh, for the first time, he makes sense," or
yeah.
something of the like. And I'm like, w- Vinny of all people doesn't with Bret, and so I had to ask about it, of course.
Yeah. Well, I, I, here's the thing: is that I obviously came up as a big Hulk Hogan fan,
Hmm.
Hulkamaniac through and through. And he was in 90, in the early 90s when he was leaving WWE, and he left after WrestleMania 8, and then came back for for the Road to WrestleMania,
Hmm.
which wasn't called that at the time.
Right.
He came back at WrestleMania, for WrestleMania 9 to team with Brutus and the Mega Maniacs,
Hmm.
and then at the end of the show, coming out and beating Yokozuna for the world title when Bret had lost to him previously.
Yes, Bret just lost to
Right.
Yokozuna. Two and a half minutes later, Hulk Hogan has the championship over his head once again.
Yes, exactly. And then, going through and King of the Ring, Hogan losing, and then going off to WCW a year later.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's the thing. It's like I went from being a Hulk Hogan fan to then Lex Luger because he came in as came in as a narcissist, but
Mm.
on the Intrepid, came in as the All American, and
So
then
you just kept on falling for the
yeah.
patriotism. You don't like Bret because he's Canadian. I get it.
No, it's not the Canadian thing, but although it's like I think my biggest thing is like I was always a fan of the big muscle guys,
Hmm.
Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
Lex Luger, and then Bret Hart, who was a fantastic baby face, he just couldn't. He was never a big good talker until later on during the Attitude Era. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
I'll,
that's
I'll
what
give you that.
I think that's what kind of did it for me was that it's just a timing thing. He wanted to
Mm.
fill Hogan's shoes, but and again, I was hoping Lex came out of WrestleMania
But
10
you
as the
you
world
you were
champion, not Brett.
you liked Lex. You
Yes.
like that turncoat. The one that just strolled out on Nitro and the Great American Mall or whatever it was.
Yep. The Mall of America.
Oh my gosh. I get it. I get it. I was still a kid, a
Hmm.
little kid during these times. I'm born in '86. And
Okay.
so by the time,
I was born in 81.
WrestleMania
So
9 was around, I was
yeah.
10 years old, if even that.
Right.
So when it comes down to it, I have a lot of fond memories of enjoying Bret Hart because I didn't miss it like you
Right.
did. It wasn't a lack of timing on my end. And then going back, after our little discussion and just picking up a little bit of things here and there on Peacock, I'm reminded of how much of a hero this guy really was.
Hmm.
He didn't have the biggest pops in the world. He didn't get
Right.
the crowd all rowdy like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin were able to do. But
Yeah.
when it came to like believing in this man's ability to fight through the odds and earn his way to a championship belt, you believed it.
Oh
You
yeah.
believed it every time he stepped in the ring.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was
And
he was a
yeah,
consistent underdog. So I mean, because think about it, being a smaller statured guy, 234 pounds against somebody like Yokozuna, 600 pounds, definitely an underdog there. But what it was is that he was more of a technical wrestler. He
oh,
wasn't a
absolutely.
guy.
Yes, I mean, with master of the ring, master of ring psychology as well.
Absolutely.
So, I guess the type of fan that you are has something to do with it as well.
Yeah.
If you're into the Flash, Jeff Hardy style stuff, then maybe Bret Hart isn't going to check those boxes for you.
Right. Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
then
yeah, but a master of ring psychology, everything was built around telling a story and a
you're right.
back and
Yeah.
forth and I'm going after this. Oh no, you caught me and now I can't.
Yeah.
Wily tricks from the heel to get over on Brett, who was just so technically capable that there was no way to beat him but to cheat. All of
Right.
that just led into great, compelling, memorable stories, which, I mean, I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling nowadays, but I feel like in the limited amount of wrestling I have been watching lately, it's not the same when it comes to the dramatics of what you see in the ring.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's funny because the guys of today, there's very little psychology because
Mm,
a lot of the guys, you know, I think what it is, a lot of the guys go for the pops, the high spots, the table spots, and it doesn't even have to be necessarily foreign objects or ladders or tables or whatever. But it comes down to the point where they're going for the big moves, the big,
right.
whatever, whether, in a four corners tag team match when you have all eight guys up on the turnbuckle and then you see the multiple power bomb suplex, superplex type thing.
Hmm.
They're going for those flashy spots
Right.
rather than, the headlock takeover because you're trying to wear them down or,
Yeah.
I'm doing this move not because I have to, but because I want to.
Right. You definitely see those super spot fests over on the AEW side of things. I think a little
Yeah,
more often than WWE. But even in WWE, I can't say that there's a whole lot of psychology that's left in those matches
right.
either. I remember even as an adult, and I guess peeling the curtain back and doing my own little wrestling career and learning how it's supposed to be done, quote unquote,
Yeah,
so to speak. I did really start to notice as an adult too, just the diminished quality by the time we were getting into the tens, the
yeah,
11s, the 12s, maybe even a little bit before then, because I remember commenting one night watching Monday Night Raw with my friends, like, I can't remember the last time a match started with a lockup.
yeah.
The bell would ring and we would start just throwing punches immediately. just
Mhm.
back and forth, punch some punch to the corner. We're gonna whip.
Yeah,
We're gonna start doing our back body drops, and I'm like, this is not what I used to watch. And I'm
no.
not, I sound like a cranky old man. I'm not complaining. It's just, it's the truth.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And and the thing is when you're listening to a lot of especially the podcasts that are out now with whether it's Eric Bischoff or Jim Cornette or Bruce Pritchard or any of the other, former wrestlers slash wrestling personalities, they'll tell you the same thing. There's a lack of storytelling. There's a lack of psychology. It's again, it's so fast paced. You're moving away from the professional wrestling aspect of professional wrestling. Yes, it's sports entertainment. Yes, it's flashy storytelling, predetermined, whatever you want to call it. But you're moving away from the wrestling grappling part of it and just
Hmm.
moving into the
Just the
athleticism,
show entertaining
showy
part,
style.
where everybody's doing their thing. Uh, it's I don't know, maybe we can liken it a little bit more to like Luchador or AAA or something
Yes.
like that, where it's
Yep.
very, very much about the acrobatics that you see. There's stories, there's promos, there's characters, but when it comes down to it, you can't follow those rules of a tag team match. It's pretty much about, whoever's in the ring right now, let's get our thing in.
Yeah.
Switch out. We don't
Right.
need tags. So
They
long
don't
as we
need
leave
tag.
the ring, somebody else can come in. We'll structure some sort of skeleton around it, but it's a free for all.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right.
So I mean, it's valid. It's a way of doing it, but it's
Yes.
not the way that I guess I learned it. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know. I don't
it's
know what to say because I
not
don't,
what
I don't, I
Vinnie
don't want
American
people to
styles
walk
you.
away from this thing thinking that I'm like saying, "Oh, it's terrible, it's trash. Everybody should turn it off and never give it
Yeah.
your time." Because I don't care. You can do that if you want to.
I will say that WWE is, in terms of what's on TV, is running on a current high right now. Um, with their storytelling, especially of the Bloodline story, with the main event storyline of The Rock, Roman Reigns,
Hmm.
Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and anybody else who's in that story, it's kicking on all cylinders right now.
And yeah, I guess that goes to show when you actually do have a little bit of good storytelling and psychology in there, people are going to flock to it and really like it.
Yes.
And we're getting that with it. I couldn't tell you anything else that's going on in the show right now, of course, which I think, means that they've done what they wanted.
Yeah.
With the people who are either tangentially interested or remotely connected know what has happened.
Right.
I couldn't tell you anything about Gunter. I know that he's got the Intercontinental Championship and has for a long time. I don't know what the
Yep.
New Day's up to. I don't know why that Scottish guy who was once the future, and I guess it's the present now. Um, I don't know what he's. I don't care. I don't know what he cares about. I couldn't get into the details of that.
Right.
But Cody Rhodes stepping out on that stage and saying that this is some BS was pretty good stuff.
It was great. And even the way they did it afterwards with The Rock and Roman Reigns walking out and going to Triple H and The Rock saying, "Fix it,"
Hmm.
or "I'll knock his teeth down his throat," and the fact that it really created a lot of emotion, even for somebody that's watched wrestling for years, and it's one of those things where you learn about, oh well, this story is going this way, or getting to be almost like General Hospital where it's predictable about where something's
Right.
going. But for somebody like that to say, "Oh, damn, there's really something cooking here. Which way are they going to go?" And you know, uh, there's so much. Um, I don't want to say controversy. That's the wrong thing, but so much misdirection in the dirt sheets, like Dave Meltzer and
Well,
everything.
I mean, he'll just publish the first thing that comes. There's no validation there at all when it comes to any of
Right.
the information he comes across. He's just going to print whatever somebody sends him.
Exactly. But for a lot of the people that cover it, even the reputable journalists like Sean Ross Sapp or
Hmm.
Ryan Satin or any of those Raj Giri that are in the know or have their sources, whatever. There's still a lot of debate whether this was the original plan to go with Cody and go back and forth, or did they
See,
pivot?
And this is why we can't have realism in wrestling anymore.
Right.
This is the reason why wrestling isn't the same as when I was a kid, is because nobody gives it a chance to just be what it is. We have to
You're right.
figure out, well, was this a plan? Did they change it? Was this the whole thing? Did he sign in his deal that he had to main event WrestleMania? If he did, what a dick. Like, people are so wrapped up in all of those details that they're not able to really just enjoy the story that's being told. I remember putting on Twitter a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago, and it applies to soap operas as well. People are no longer asking themselves, well, why is a character doing this?
Right.
And now they're asking themselves, why are they making the character do this?
Yeah.
And that just completely changes how you are
How you view it.
entertained by your entertainment.
You're exactly right. That's what it boils down to. Before I get any further, go ahead if you're watching. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Give us a like, subscribe, get notified. Definitely help us get our subscriber totals up. We're at 49 subscribers right now. We got to get to that 300.
Such an easy click, and it changes nothing other than you see the videos and don't have to
Right.
look for them. Just do it.
Exactly. And if you're listening on the podcast, go ahead, give us a 5-star Apple review or Spotify or anywhere else you find your favorite podcast and you're listening to us on. Uh, Also, as I've said before, if you're wanting to get a really great I'm a Paul Heyman guy shirt like I'm wearing now, go over. We are an official affiliate of the WWE shop. So go to sudsandsquarecircle.com/wrestling merch. That brings you to WWE shop with our affiliate code, and I do get commission based off your purchases. Go over. They also do have that sweet Super Bowl championship belt for the Kansas City Chiefs that just recently there. So
You're a
go
wrestling
ahead.
fan and plan on going there anyway, might as well just use the Suds in the Squared Circle link.
Yes, absolutely. And help us out. Um, but anywho, just kind of moving back to what we were talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it does because a lot we know that whether it's wrestling or soap operas, it's written by a team of writers.
Yeah.
And there's so many people like, oh, why are the writers writing this character one way or another?
Hmm.
And again, yes, a lot of the writers have the blame when it comes to certain things, but why question it, right? Again, why, like you said, nobody's asking why a character is doing something. Why are they making the character? Why are they writing the character this way?
It's such a thing. It's such a thing too because I can't deny that thinking. It's not like I don't do that thinking. I have a podcast. Of
Yeah,
course, I've done that thinking.
exactly.
I've done that sort of thinking my entire life. I just haven't had anywhere to put it like we do nowadays here on the internet.
Yeah,
It's great that people are passionate. It's great that they would, are in this position of, well, if I could do it, this is what I would do.
right.
Because these sorts of achievements and jobs and ways of getting into something you love, like wrestling, have never been more accessible than they are today.
Hmm.
So it's great, but the missing portion, I think, is the active pursuit of doing it. Um, you know, uh, I think that that's the key factor when it comes to ripping something apart. You have to try to do it yourself in some way. That's part of the reason why we're very positive on our 10th floor podcast about
Yeah,
General Hospital is because we're not making the show. We have no idea what it takes to make the show. We talked to Fido Xavier a couple of times as a director on it, and that is the closest we've gotten
right.
to any sort of understanding of what life is like behind that camera. So we're not qualified to rip it apart. We can talk about the things that we liked, and that's kind of how we approach things. I think that that's sort of missing a little bit in a lot of the internet wrestling community. Um, but it is what it is. People have comments. Ultimately, my big question to them is, planned or not, is it good?
Yeah. Is it eliciting an emotional response
Yeah.
from you? I agree. That's what it comes down to is it causing you to want to tune in to find out what happens next? And I remember this quote, the movie, um, oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it was the Private Parts about Howard Stern.
Hmm.
And there was a quote in there that said, the people that like it are listening because they like it. The people that hate it are listening because they want to see what he's going to say next.
Hmm.
And that's what it comes down to is like, I've never been the kind of person to like the hate watching something, watching something and complaining about everything. I mean, if that's your job, you have a pretty miserable life. But at the same time, it's like that's your choice.
Critic
And
used to be a job.
um, and again, it's like, why go ahead and always complain? Find something you like and comment about it. Or, if you really are not liking anything, go ahead and start sending messages to the people in charge.
Yeah, it's also valid to like to navigate what you love through what you don't like about it. This is something I learned from a close friend of mine that I've met 15 years ago now. Because it didn't matter what big comic book fan, and it didn't matter what they did on a TV show or a movie or anything. He absolutely hated every moment of everything that came out. But that is how he was navigating something that he loved, was
Right,
comparing it to its origin and disliking the new stuff. But he was still engaging with his passion. The thing that makes that situation different versus I think some of the commentary that we're talking about is he never encouraged somebody to not like it with him.
right,
He just didn't like it himself. But he
yeah,
never went, how could you possibly
right,
believe that this is good? How could you possibly waste your time on this? How could you possibly think that this is good? He never did that.
right, yeah.
So I think that's also a key factor, just
It is.
don't harsh somebody's buzz, man. If they're liking it, let them like it.
Yeah, no,
You know,
exactly.
I've always liked, I've never been the biggest fan of the biggest stars. I couldn't care less about Batista. I couldn't care less about Randy Orton. I had a lot of love for Hulk Hogan. I was a little kid.
Yeah,
I enjoyed Shawn Michaels. I enjoy Ric Flair.
mhm,
Um, don't have much of an opinion on Chris Jericho,
yeah,
because my favorite wrestlers were Dolph Ziggler,
mhm,
were the Hurricane,
yeah,
were Santino Marella.
yeah,
Were all of these people who weren't the biggest stars on the roster were the ones that kept me watching.
right. Yeah, and
Even
I
on
get
the
that.
lady side of things, Nydia, oh, Nydia was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I even liked what was her name? Candice something?
Candice Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, she had such major improvement.
yeah.
If you watched her over the years, she went from simple model eye candy to somebody who actually was capable in the ring. And I know that
With
Trish
a
gets a
lot of
lot
those
of
women.
applause for her growth and being, the diva of the century and all that kind of stuff that they've given her.
Yeah,
Candice Michelle, I think, was right on her tails when it comes to just overall taking to the game.
yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, if you look at that era of, especially of the women, you had Trish Stratus, you had Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler, Candice Michelle came in at that point in time.
Yeah,
No, Lita was different because she came in as a wrestler. But
right.
out of those other four, they were mainly managers, models, what have you, before actually learning to wrestle and
Hmm.
getting in the ring. Trish Stratus is an icon. She picked it up like crazy.
Hmm.
Tori Wilson was fantastic. And Stacy Keibler had her moments, although she wasn't a great in-ring talent, but she was still really good.
Was a big fan of Jacqueline and
Yep.
Victoria as well. I mean, really,
Yep.
when it comes down to it, I'm very much a like 96, 97 kind of guy. It
Yep.
really was like b before the screw job
Yes.
type of era. And then everything changed after that. That's when they really leaned into attitude. And of course I watched it and I watched it every single week. I was invested, but when it comes to like looking back and reflecting on that era, I
Yep.
don't really do that. I
Right.
reflect on times just before it and definitely times afterward because that's when I was in high school. I was in
Yeah.
high school during the alliance and
Yeah.
the aftermath and the blended roster and the brand split. The what do they call it? The ruthless aggression era.
Yeah. The ruthless aggression era.
Yeah, yeah. So I was in high school in that time. So again, that's another like time in which someone would be more invested.
Right.
If you're 46 years old and just trying to capture that feeling of when you were watching wrestling when you were 17, it's not going to happen because you're not in that demographic of imagination and make believe anymore.
Right. No, you're exactly right. That's why the question always comes up, and listening to some of Conrad Thompson's
Yeah.
podcast. It's the same thing. He's my age, so it's the same situation where you're thinking, oh yeah, you liked ECW. ECW was great back then. Looking at it now, it's really not that great.
Hmm.
Like at the time, yes, a lot of weapons, a lot of violence, a lot of blood and guts, and yeah, that was great for the time. It had its time, but now it's like Now it's like I want more storytelling.
And there's
Now,
this other show on YouTube called Reliving the War. It's on the Wrestling
yep,
Bios channel. They're not competing with you, so I don't mind sharing the channel out there.
yeah,
But they do the Reliving the War, and every Thursday they do a Raw and Nitro comparison, and I find myself so often um, waiting a little longer and waiting a little longer and waiting a little longer to watch it when it used to be like must see Thursday
yeah,
at noon for me. Television, YouTube television.
yeah,
And it's not the case anymore because the content, the years, what they're covering is the Ministry of Darkness, the corporate ministry, the complete and utter collapse of WCW is happening right now.
yeah.
And it's just like not fun to remember as much as the early stuff,
I can
the
understand that.
96, 97 pre screw job era.
Yeah. Well,
And it's just
speaking
so
of,
weird that you can point to that moment as like, I think Bret Hart said it or somebody else did on Dark Side of the Ring that the Montreal screw job was when wrestling lost its innocence entirely.
I think you're right. Yeah. And that makes total sense. And going back to the screw job, it's like obviously we're talking, we've been talking about Bret Hart and everything. And here's the thing, and I think the problem is that the Montreal screw job itself, it completely killed kayfabe. Now, granted, Vince came out back in the 80s to say wrestling was scripted because he didn't want to pay taxes in New Jersey based on sports.
Right.
And be, have the have that whole thing. But when it comes down to it, there's still a lot of people that, a lot of kids at the time and a lot of, people that still suspended disbelief
Yes.
because of a lot of because the screw job was based upon backstage politics and backstage stuff. And I think that's right. That's what killed the innocence of it because
Yeah.
you either believed, okay, well, why don't you just let Bret win in Canada and lose the next night on Raw? But then it's like, okay, well, you're going to have more people paying to watch a pay-per-view, give them the title switch, whether or not it's in Canada. And, that's what Bret should have done to do business. And it's going to be debated till the end of time. Um,
I mean, if you want to, boil it down to just its bulk, yes, he should have done business. If you just want to boil it down to its absolute most basic
yeah,
determination of events. But there was so much leading up to all of that,
yes.
years really leading up to that moment, that there's just so much more to consider than he just should have done it. I'm personally camp reject. I'm not going to do it because I'm a Canadian hero. And pro, I said I'm not going to do it because I'm a Canadian hero because F Shawn Michaels.
Right.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
uh, just another example of what we just talked about earlier when he lost the belt to Yokozuna, gave it to Hulk Hogan. He's been on record plenty of times saying that he didn't like it, he didn't agree with it,
Yep.
but ultimately he played ball, he did business, he
Yep.
did what was asked of him,
Yeah.
but
And
not.
and again, he's come out and said he played ball and did that because he was assured by Vince that it would be Hogan and Bret at SummerSlam for the world
And then
title.
Hogan did his normal thing where he squirrels out of stuff. Uh,
And Hogan says that that wasn't the case, or whatever the case may be.
I mean, really, when it comes down to Vince McMahon, he either has lied to you or hasn't at the same time, and you're
Yes,
never going to find out until you find out.
right. And he's the only one that can say yes or no to it. He
Right.
I remember I remember a segment on Monday Night Raw where it was Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon in the ring, and Paul said, "I'm a promoter, you're a promoter. I've lied through my teeth every single day of my
Hmm.
life to get to the next day. And you know what? You have too. And you can't say you haven't." And it
Hmm.
sort of boils down to being a
Hmm.
promoter.
Yeah.
So, there's all these stories that come out, and Bruce Pritchard, I love the show and I love the guy, but there are many times where he'll say, "Oh yeah, well, Vince never said I'm going to promise you the title. He always said I could see you as a world champion, or I could see you this," and people misinterpret it.
Hmm.
Bruce Pritchard will always go down as a Vince McMahon sympathizer,
Oh yeah.
regardless of the current situation, whether or not he knew,
Yeah. I mean,
that's
you can't do what he has done without a lot of friends.
right, exactly. Um, but it does boil down to the fact of when Bret Hart came in and said, um, I'm not willing to put Shawn Michaels over, especially, and I think the from if I remember correctly from the Dark Side of the Ring episode was he went to Shawn and Bret told Shawn, "Oh, I'm going to go ahead and do the job for you or whatever," and Shawn said, "Oh, well, I wouldn't even, I won't do that, do the
Wouldn't
same
do it
for
for
you."
you.
Right. So that's what kind of made Bret say, "Nope, I'm not gonna
Hmm.
do the job for him,"
Yeah.
especially in Canada and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So the bigger debate is, was it a work? What
Well,
was it?
there's the thing because
Yeah.
the big thing that's hanging on all of it is one fun little phrase that comes up so much more when it comes to Hulk Hogan than it does Bret Hart.
Mhm.
The creative control clause.
Yes. Creative, yeah. The creative control part of it is Bret Hart supposedly had creative control for the last 30 days of his contract. So on his way out, he can approve or deny any creative that was, going to be happening for his character. Creative control for Hulk Hogan on the WCW side was the same thing, where there's, now many people say, oh, there were so many people that had creative control in WCW.
It was just Hogan.
It was just Hogan, maybe Bret,
And I
Eric,
think it was
maybe
less,
Shawn.
I think creative control is too much of a broad term as well. I think it was control over endings of matches.
Yes,
Not
yes,
necessarily this is the story I'm playing, but if you're sticking me in the ring with Horace Hogan and you have him going over, I'm going to say no, it's
right,
me instead.
yes. And honestly, the biggest flop to that was Starrcade '97 with the ending of Hogan and Sting, which of course
Sting
did
didn't have a
Bret
tan. What can we say? He didn't have a tan.
Hart. Right, yeah. Um, you know,
No, Bischoff further explains that because he could sound bit for the he didn't have a tan thing, but
right,
like it was just one of many examples
right.
of Steve Borden not walking into the arena showing I'm your
Yeah, that he
guy.
was ready.
Yeah. I mean, that's his point of view on things.
Right,
I wasn't there. I
exactly.
didn't see it. I watched it on pay-per-view and had a great time.
Yep,
That was the wonder of WCW. It's not for its rewatchability, it's
yep,
for its one-time watchability live as it was going through.
yes, yep, exactly. So the biggest controversy is when at the ending when Hogan goes to pin Sting, Nick Patrick counts to three. It looked like a normal count, and Bret came in and said, this
Yeah, it's
isn't going
supposed
to
to be the
happen
quick
again.
count.
Fast count, right? Because the original thing was supposed to be a fast count. Then
Yeah.
Hogan went to Nick Patrick and said, "No, no, it's going to be a regular count. We're going to just go with me keeping the title." But
Hmm.
then it apparently got changed, and there was so much miscommunication. Bret comes in, restarts the match. He was there. He's a referee that night. Sting puts on a Scorpion Deathlock. Hogan submits. There's a championship match. So it was evident there, but that was
Hmm.
more miscommunication.
Yeah, that was Nick Patrick blowing it, essentially, is
Yes,
what that comes down to. I mean, I appreciate the idea. I know that Bischoff has since said, if I could go back and do it again, I'd have Bret Hart wrestle his first night, not referee. Mistake
yeah,
of mine. I was young and dumb. What can I say?
yeah,
I think people should give Eric Bischoff that. He was young and dumb. Okay,
yeah,
look at who he surrounded himself with. They weren't giving him the best ideas. Okay, uh,
exactly.
um, but I can appreciate the idea of this just happened to me a couple of weeks ago where somebody got screwed
Yep,
by a crooked ref.
yeah,
I'm not going to allow that to happen again. And if the quick count had happened, the moment would have been sold better. That's
right.
for sure. It
Yes.
still wasn't the best way to use them post all of that Survivor Series stuff. But then also at the same time, if this was a giant work, if this was Bret Hart's whole idea or he was behind it all
Yeah.
as a way to continue to support WWF while making WCW money,
Yeah.
you know, uh, nobody has ever gone out and said that. I don't get much from the stories that people say about that night.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, Bret Hart's story is always exactly the same.
Yes.
Like he memorized
um, another thing is So here's one thing that I've come to the conclusion of is that I'm not going to worry about. I'm somebody that's always been able to split the character from the actor, and it goes the same for wrestling. When it comes to like the or should I say the person portraying the character,
Right.
I'm gonna enjoy Batista matches, even though I don't agree with his personal
Hmm.
feelings on certain things. Um, you know, and it goes again with the same thing with General Hospital actors, and
Hmm.
I can like the Alexis character, and I may not agree with Nancy Lee Grahn because she's so outspoken about certain things. So, as a matter of fact, she's got me blocked on Twix. So, um,
Who cares? You know.
but the thing is like, when it comes down to certain things, is that we have to be able to um look through things.
Yeah.
Scott Hall was a big advocate saying that that the Montreal Screwjob was a work.
Oh
That
yes,
Bret and
absolutely.
Vince were in on it and everything because of the whole, WCW being, drawing the air.
And he doesn't even talk creative control either. He's like, Really, really? Big, huge pay-per-view, millions of dollars on the line. They're never gonna cut the camera from the guy spitting at the dude. They're never gonna turn off Bret Hart's mic. Yeah, that to me, that was pretty convincing. All right.
Yes,
What does Scott Hall have to gain?
right.
You know?
Yes, exactly. Which actually, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, is one of the legends getting a biography on A&E this upcoming season.
Oh, how nice. How
Which
nice. I remember it's so weird because I think Razor Ramon was just outside my age bracket. Just
yeah,
outside. I remember him, of course, but I was never taken by Razor Ramon. And then things got so spotty with his schedule in WCW that there was really not much to invest in long term with him there. And
yeah,
so he was one of those like mainstay wrestlers that had always been a presence in my viewing that I never really like attached to.
right.
But I know that's not the case for other people. I know there's a lot of really big Scott Hall fans out there. And there's no
I'm
denying
one
when
of
it
them.
came down to it, he was kind of the workhorse of the NWO.
Yes, he
So,
was. Yep. And that's the thing. And it does. It comes down to where you were at the time that they were active. You know, Obviously Razor Ramon coming into the WWE in 92 and then, leaving in 96, going to WCW. That was, when I was, my, sixth grade, seventh, eighth, into high school during that point in time.
yeah.
The NWO era, the Monday Night War era, for the most part, was when I was in high school from 96, 90, fall 95 to 99. So,
Mhm.
so that was all then. That was, and that's why it was like I was a big, huge NWO fan. I still am. I still wear the merchandise. I still
Oh, NWO was, I mean, in
my
96,
my
97
phone
NWO.
case NWO. You
Let's be
know,
specific here. Those first 2 years NWO.
yeah, exactly. Before they watered it down and everything. Although I do have my Wolfpack memorabilia too, but
But then
uh,
again, and hindsight is 2020 on that as well. If the network had allowed him to split the roster between two shows,
mhm,
the NW, like there was a reason, there was a plan,
yeah,
there was a goal behind making it so large. They just weren't able to finish it, which
right,
ultimately just, I mean, that Thunder decision is pretty much one of like the nail, if not the first.
yes. It was one of the nails in the coffin, and and Eric Bischoff was in a very bad spot at that point in time. The best book I've recommended numerous times is if you read the book Nitro, The
Mhm.
Incredible Rise and Inevitable Fall of Ted Turner's WCW, written by Guy Evans. I've interviewed Guy Evans a few times on this show. But if you go and read that book, it is absolutely the best telling of what WCW went through and what Eric Bischoff went through at the time between backstage politics, the fact that nobody at Turner outside of Ted himself wanted wrestling on their networks,
Right.
and then the parade of people coming in that had no business being in the wrestling industry, it made it just that much more difficult. When you're going to tell a wrestling company that I want to see your script 6 months in advance, that just can't happen. because
I have
you
no
could
idea
have a
who's going to be hurt 6 months from now, or who's going to be hot, who's going to be cold, who's going to run their course.
you could have a general bullet pointed area saying, we're planning on, because that's how they used to book the WWF was, here are your WrestleMania matches, let's build back from them.
Yeah, I mean, you could
But
have a
again, that's
general
a rough outline.
idea of where you want to go. I mean, that's a very television way of going about things. Like, I could tell you over on ABC General Hospital, the ABC, the network, has an idea of what GH wants to do 6 months from now because that's
Yeah,
how far out they have their rough idea. They don't have scripts for ABC to approve,
yeah,
but ABC has an outline of what they're planning on doing for months and months and months and months and months.
yes,
What that resembles ultimately when it comes time to produce whatever it is that they have on their agenda, who knows?
yeah,
Who knows? Everything is always changing. Um, but yeah, that's a very TV like show way of going about things. And when it comes down to it, like we all know, I don't need to explain it to the listeners. Live wrestling is not traditional television.
right. Yeah,
Even with the scripts that they give them nowadays, man, you can give anybody a live microphone, right?
yeah,
Who knows what they're gonna say?
exactly. All right, so kind of moving off a little bit, moving off of Bret Hart and stuff. One thing I do want to bring up and go over is, um, as everyone knows, the dark cloud that's hanging over the WWE right now with Vince McMahon's scandals.
TKO WWE is doing backflips over this Cody Rock storyline because
Yeah,
boy, oh boy.
yes. I mean, let me put it to you this way: is that the fact that a lot of mainstream media is picking up on The Rock, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, and everything on that storyline is fantastic news for TKO and WWE. Because that kind of, and I don't want to put it on the back burner. I don't want to make it seem that it's minimized, but the fact is that there's still a dark cloud of the Vince McMahon scandal and the lawsuit claiming sexual harassment, sex trafficking, as well as some more information coming out. And there's just more information coming out. First of all, John Laurinaitis, through his attorney, Edward Brennan from Tampa, Florida, has been, has basically turned on Vince, saying he's a victim as well as Miss Grant, the one who filed the lawsuit, which,
Vince made me do it. What?
yes, Vince made me do it. And here's the thing, and I said it on my last episode that Amanda Russ was on. In reality, going from a strictly HR standpoint, yes, John Laurinaitis, as a subordinate of Vince McMahon, is a victim when it comes to sexual harassment in the workplace, because of the power dynamic. But the idea being that I could, according to the, lawsuit, the wording in the lawsuit, and a lot of the stuff that was talked about in there was that, Ms. Grant would be alone with Johnny Ace or John Laurinaitis on a regular basis, 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, whatever the case may be, So if he was really saying that he's a victim, and she's alleging that all this stuff took place while they were alone, you know, why couldn't he say, okay, well, Vince is telling us we have to do this. Let's just not and say we did, and let's,
Exactly, right?
you know, and that's, make him think we did, and, we could just go our separate ways or whatever. And it's the same thing. It's kind of the same thing with Brock Lesnar. Brock is being ostracized because of, in the lawsuit, it says that she was being pimped out or whatever term you want to use. Vince was trying to re-sign as it says, former WWE and former UFC champion. Doesn't mention Brock by name, but put the pieces together, and that's who they
Hmm.
have. It's the only one in history. Um,
The only one you can point to.
right.
It's not Ken Shamrock.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Ken Shamrock. It's not Ronda Rousey.
You're right.
Um, but you go ahead and say, you know, what it says is, oh, well, through Vince's text, oh, I just sent this picture him. He wants a picture of you urinating, or he wants a video of you urinating, and he's really like this, he really like that. Well, playing devil's advocate, because all this is alleged until it's proven guilty, um, it could have just been Vince saying that on his end, unless you see text messages between Vince and Brock. then that evidence comes out, then I'll, whatever. Apparently they, according to the text messages, according to the lawsuit, that, Ms. Grant and Brock apparently, made plans to get together, but never did because of a snowstorm. So, is that really, is there anything for Brock Lesnar to be named, and have all this heat on him? Well, let's just err on the side of caution. TKO took him, they took him out
Hmm.
of the Royal Rumble. They're shying away from him. He was taken off the video game cover, and they're just kind of downplaying him right now. Okay, so if it comes out that he had nothing to do with it, he'll be back soon. If
These
it
are
comes out that he
commercial decisions, not legal decisions, you know?
right,
Like,
exactly.
it's well within their right to do so based on these accusations.
Exactly. The other thing that's been back in the news, and I'm getting this from MSN.com, is regarding Ashley Massaro, for the first winner of the WWE Diva Search. She didn't have a really great in-ring career, but she did go ahead and grace the cover of Playboy. She was also a big time star in the WWE.
I remember her well.
What was that?
I remember her well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she did, end up committing suicide back in 2019, which was heartbreaking for a
Oh, yeah.
lot of us that were her fans. And it's like she actually just she replied to one of my tweets just a week before. I remember that vividly, because she was very, very fan friendly, like that. But she did say that, she came out and said a number of years ago that she had been sexually assaulted while WWE was on one of their overseas tours in the Middle East during the Gulf War number 2. Um, and that she had been sexually assaulted by apparently somebody in the armed forces in one of the armed force hospitals by a supposed doctor, and a number of people that she claimed that she told John Laurinaitis about, and Kevin Dunn, and Vince started making certain sexual terminology in her area, and started coming on to her, wanted to be with her, um, on road trips, and have him, have her come to his room. So a lot of stuff is coming out now saying that, her friend, uh, I think her name is Pipia, Kara Pipia, um, went on to Banfield show. I think that's on CNBC, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
But she came onto that show and basically retold the story in her words. Again, it's all hearsay, so again, it has to be proven. But it covered that John Laurinaitis knew a lot about this. Vince knew about it. She went to Kevin Dunn. Eventually Vince started writing a lot of her promos himself, and even though one of the writers said, no, Michael Hayes said, "No, you're not reading this. Who wrote it?" And she said, "Vince." He's like, "Well, those are the breaks." And he tried to downplay her career and humiliate her on her way out.
Hmm.
Um, Allegedly, this is something that is in the article again on MSN.com. This is a quote from Miss Pipia, who was on that show. As soon as she got back to the States, she had the phone calls. Vince had his daughter, Stephanie, take his place because she was a woman to make Ashley comfortable. And they just played with her because everything that Stephanie had made her feel comfortable and safe about. Um, as soon as she walked into this boardroom meeting, Ashley was on her own completely. She was threatened, and there was no compassion, there was no sympathy, there was no nothing. Again, it's third party news. It's not from Ashley herself. It's from her friend. Um, and it's a sad, sad situation, no
Oh,
matter how you want
absolutely.
it. When it's really a situation that has to be handled in court, in a civil court. Ashley's not here to talk for herself, so we can
Mm-mm.
only go based upon her um her affidavits, previously. And apparently her, Ashley's previous lawyer screwed things up so she couldn't sue WWE. I think that's what it was.
Hmm.
Um, but again, all these new stories are coming out, and this is the one thing that I said that Bret was actually smart saying it
Right.
was was that for all he you know didn't was against what happened in Montreal, he always deep down had a respect for Vince, and that's all blown out now. That's
Yeah.
gone. He has no respect for Vince McMahon anymore. Um, and that's the thing. Vince McMahon, in my opinion, everything that's come out previously, you can kind of say, yeah, they were going after his money. But with all this stuff coming up now and all this stuff coming up at the same time, whether it's the Rita Chatterton case back in the 90s or that, masseuse in Florida that well, it was either Florida or California that said that he, tried to sexually assault her. All of these things coming up now, you're looking at, okay, there's a pattern there. So it's too much.
Listen, yes, the courts are going to have to decide ultimately if this is true or false. I'm leaning toward if I was on that jury, they can't select me because I already have an opinion. Uh, uh, so yeah, I mean, from my point of view and perspective, as somebody who's watched the WWF since I was a fetus,
Mhm.
there is nothing surprising about these allegations. There is nothing surprising about his potential guilt over doing these things. I would say that the thing that shocked me the most was how extreme the text
Yeah,
messages are. But also at the same time, I know how easy it can be for somebody in his position to completely dehumanize somebody and consider them just on the other side of a screen that
yeah,
they can summon every once in a while. They aren't actually real people. I
right.
think that a person who probably took a few liberties when he wasn't a billionaire,
Hmm.
then became a billionaire with access to
Yep.
so many things that he only dreamed of being able to do
Hmm.
because he grew up rich. He
Yeah.
grew up rich in wrestling. Let me say that again. He grew up rich in wrestling.
Yes.
It is not a clean place.
No. Because he did not grow up rich. He was, living in a trailer park. His stepfather had abused him, when he was growing up. I don't know about his mother whether she abused him or not, but he was been very open about being abused by his stepfather. But
But is it true?
I believe it is true. I do believe it is.
Yeah, and listen, clearly I don't know much about little tiny Vincent J.
Yeah.
I just know, a little bit more about adult Vincent J who bought it for $1 million. But regardless,
Yeah.
getting into the world of, being friends with, you know, somebody who doesn't have the best reputation in Donald Trump, and then being able to enter the world that that person has been in
Yeah.
for so long, just, I think, definitely gives somebody the opportunity, at the very least, to be their worst
Yeah.
that they could be.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And it comes down to the point where certain people in their position, whether it's Trump or McMahon or Biden or anybody else with that kind of money, that kind of power, that kind of political gain, is that the joke about the Clintons is that if you become an enemy of the Clintons, you commit suicide a week later.
You're
Uh,
the Pine Barrens.
yeah, exactly. The Pine Barrens. There we go. We just saw those on GH this week. Um, but the thing is that a lot of people think they're above the law if they have enough money and they can get away with
I
it.
mean, to a certain degree, they are. Okay. So there's one thing that I know beyond there's death and taxes, right? Those are the
Yeah.
two inescapable truths. The
Yep.
third one is rich people live in a completely different world than we do, and we have no idea what it is. We live on the
Exactly.
same planet. We live in the same country, same city, same states, all that kind of stuff, but we have no idea of the world that they live in.
You're right. The the thing that changed that, in my opinion, is when the Me Too movement started. Now, I wasn't, a full supporter of the Me Too movement, because there were a lot of people that I feel based upon certain facts that came out is like, you knew what you were doing, but now your career is in the toilets. So now you're going to go after somebody. But the thing is that we've seen this happen with Harvey Weinstein. he wanted to get, he wanted to use sex to get women, to have people use sex and go, oh, hey, your mom just came in the chat room.
Oh, what a wonderful time for her to pop in. Hi, Mom.
She said, hello, people. I just popped on. Um, that is Kat from the 10th floor for those of you who don't know.
Hi, Mom. We're talking about how creepy Vince McMahon is.
Um, and it's like even bringing it back to like the wrestling storylines. If you look at the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression, more likely the Attitude Era though, you have Trish Stratus, barking like a dog on national television.
He showed you who he dreamt he could be
Yep,
on shows every night of the week.
right.
Something that I learned, I want to say relatively recently, which I shouldn't have learned recently, but I did, was that whole $1 million man Ted DiBiase gimmick. How they hooked Ted DiBiase into signing on to that was if Vince could give himself a wrestling character, this is what it would be.
And it's like going back to that is I'll remember the story that Bruce Pritchard told on Something to Wrestle, in that he was sitting with Vince on an airplane, and this was back in the 80s when there were still smoking sections on an airplane where literally it was one row was smoking, one row was not. The
Because,
guy
it
lit
doesn't
up
travel or anything.
Yeah, the guy lit up his cigarette and in the smoking seat. Vince, notoriously hates smokers. So he turned around and said, "Hey, could you put that out? Uh, could you put that out?" He's like, "No, I paid for a smoking section. I want to enjoy myself." And he just started offering him money. He said, I'll buy your seat and I'll put $500 on top of it if you'll put
Hmm.
that out." Eventually, the guy gave in, put it out, and that was fine. And that's when Bruce said, he really is the $1 million man. Everybody's got
Everybody's
a
got a
price,
price.
you know? And you're right. If Vince, and then he created the Mr. McMahon character later on, which took off like lightning.
He exaggerated himself and put himself on TV.
Yes, exactly.
It's what he did.
Your
Oh
mom
my
said,
God.
don't be a perv. It's easy.
Yeah, I mean, really, Vince, it really is. But I guess it goes back to what we were saying before, where it's that whole different world that these rich people live in, where morality and consequences are totally different.
Yep.
I mean, clearly, there's an amount of understanding. Ooh, the general public can't learn about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right for the public to know, but
Right.
it's right for my life. And that's dangerous, you guys. That's dangerous.
It
Um,
really is.
and so, I mean, if you want to be fair, yeah, we're gonna see what the trial says. But I mean, the court of public opinion, it's
Yes,
hard to get out of.
you're exactly right. I know it's 7:55 p.m. So those of you who are, especially on the East, Central, and Mountain Time, I believe, I'm not sure about the West Coast, but you'll be going over to SmackDown on Fox in about 4 minutes. Uh, but I know we might lose the viewers anyways at that point in time. But we're here on demand as always, right here on YouTube. Um, so what's coming up in the future on 10th floor?
You
I've
mean
had
so
a couple of really great interviews recently.
yeah, so I wish I could tell you the next one that's coming, but I don't know. It hasn't been arranged yet. Uh, every once in a while I'll send some messages out and see which ones land and which ones don't. That is my entire strategy.
Yep.
I get lucky sometimes and sometimes I don't. January was the luckiest I had ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we recently had because okay, so on the 10th floor channel, if you guys haven't been there, we do two main podcasts, both on Sunday morning. Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific time. We have Days for Dummies, which is the Days of Our Lives podcast. And then at 11 a.m. that same day, we do 10th Floor podcast, 10th Floor GH, which is the General Hospital podcast. I host it with my mom. Since I've got a little bit of extra time now, we're trying to do a third weekly podcast as well called Late Night Tonight on Thursdays, in which we just cover whatever it is we feel like talking about.
Yep.
And so those are the main things that I got going on right now. If you want to head over to that channel when we're done here before you watch SmackDown, to youtube.com/10th floor podcast, give us a little subscribe, click around and see what's going on there. Beyond that, we'll see what shakes out for me. I don't know. I don't know. Kind of
Well,
an open and exciting time.
yeah, no, it's a good listen. he and his mom dad do a fantastic job, when they go live and also, on the podcast as well, podcast feed. And your mom says, "What does your shirt say?" I'm not sure if she meant mine or yours. Mine is
Probably.
simply, "I'm a Paul Heyman guy."
I'm a pole here.
That's my shirt that you can get WWE shop.
Paul Heyman.
You know,
They said when I was doing wrestling, I was a wrestling manager. I shared a picture on Twitter, 10th floor
yep,
GH, if you
I
want
saw
to, or
that.
X Twitter, of me with the DMW Tag Team Championships. I think they were the Action Coast Wrestling Championships at that time. Um, so check that out because that's fun. I'm a former champion.
Yeah.
I was going somewhere with that, but then my camera distracted me and I have no idea what it was.
So about the was that DNW,
DMW,
DMW?
it was Devil Mountain Wrestling is
Okay.
is is the original, and I think the belts were carried over to Action Coast Wrestling or to East Bay Pro Wrestling or something. Because DMW, Dan Hellfire, who was the booker for that, was
Okay.
done. And sometimes when you're the book and you're done, so does the alphabet that was following you, and so new alphabets were born from that, from people who wanted to continue the shows in the area. And I think
Yes.
they inherited those belts, and so they said DMW for a while, even though it was for a different wrestling promotion. But I was a tag team champion because we did that Freebird thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I had my little stable of wrestlers. They were called the Classic Connection. It
Hmm.
was Buddy Royal and Levi Shapiro, the original Classic Connection tag team.
Yeah.
Oh man, they were awesome. Check those guys out on YouTube. I think Buddy stopped wrestling, but Levi's still out there.
Okay.
Then we had Alexander G. Bernard, Perry Von Vicious, and Idris Jackson. It was a pretty large group of people, and I was their manager. We were
Hmm.
the Classic Connection together because we all had kind of old school throwbacky type gimmicks.
Yep.
The Classic Connection tag team itself was very much like the Brainbusters.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, Perry Von Vicious and Alexander G. Bernard were your rich snobs, and I was out
Hey.
there doing my manager thing. And here's why I brought all this up. The comparisons that I received was very much like if you took Bobby Heenan, Jim Cornette, and Paul
Mhm.
Heyman and
Yep.
like made them one person with a little bit less talent.
Yeah.
That's me.
Right.
I will never say I'm as talented as Paul Heyman. Never. Somebody else can say that though, and I'll believe him.
Well, hopefully, I'm actually hoping that Paul Heyman goes into the WWE Hall of Fame this year, being that it's in Philadelphia, the home of ECW, which I'm actually happy that I'm going to, for the first time ever, be at the ECW arena
Hey,
in Philadelphia, WrestleMania weekend. I'm going to be going to 6 wrestling shows in 5 days that weekend.
that sounds awesome.
Yep, I got tickets for it's the indie organization, indie promotion that's putting on the show during WrestleCon. So that's I'm going to that show Thursday. Then Friday night SmackDown. Saturday I'm going to NXT and then WrestleMania Night 1. Sunday's WrestleMania Night 2, and then the Monday Night Raw. So
Holy smokes.
yes, it's a bucket list item for me. I'm very happy. Um,
That's
I'm
awesome.
still working
That's
on
awesome. What,
WWE.
I've
Oh,
been to two WrestleManias and a Royal Rumble. I think I went to a No Way Out
yep,
in San Francisco. I remember this one where Eddie Guerrero won or lost the belt or won the belt.
won the
I think
belt for Brock.
Goldberg showed up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was No Way Out in
Yeah,
February.
I was there. I saw that one live. Goldberg walked by our section. I'm like, what? It's Goldberg. I went to the
Yes.
Rumble. It was Rumble '06. It was the one with the botched ending where Batista and John Cena both went over the top and Vince McMahon came out and blew his quads.
Yep.
I
Yep.
was there. Uh, I went to WrestleMania 19 in Seattle. That was a gift from my grandma. She drove us up from California to go hang
Oh,
out in
nice.
Seattle. WrestleMania 19. And so that was Jericho, HBK, Booker
Yep.
T, Triple H, Lesnar, Kurt Angle, where Lesnar landed on his head.
Yes.
Look at these memories I have of people getting hurt. Um,
Yep.
and then I went to the WrestleMania. I wish I don't remember the number of it, but Sting was there. Sting versus Triple H.
Oh,
That was over
WrestleMania
in
31. That
yeah,
was
that was in San Jose,
Thursday.
California, and
Yep.
so I was able to attend that.
Yeah.
That was a good time. And that one though, I went when had already disconnected from being a regular watcher.
Yep.
And I tell you, if you're not watching every week, a lot of the spectacle of WrestleMania isn't there anymore.
Yeah. But I mean that would have been a great one to be alive, especially if you're someone that grew up in the Attitude Era. simply because of Sting, Triple H, NWO, DX,
That was the match I was
Henry.
looking forward to. And
Yeah,
so having Sting, Triple H, Sting versus, and of course I wanted Sting versus The Undertaker, and that didn't happen,
everybody
but
did.
whatever. But Sting versus Triple H, and then we had the NWO come out, we had the DX moment. Like I was, I was able to get swept up in that for sure.
Yeah,
WrestleMania 19 Piper shows up,
yeah.
you know. So I get it. I think that's it for pay-per-views that I've been to. No, I went to a SummerSlam. I went to the SummerSlam where DX came out in the tank.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I went to that one. I feel like I went to another one too. I just can't recall. I'm not trying to boast. I'm just having a conversation. I'm sorry
Yeah.
if I stole your thunder from your
No,
6 day week of wrestling.
no, no, not at all. It's always a great thing because wrestling, in my opinion, it just like soap operas. So being being that we like both of those genres of entertainment, you can pinpoint what got you into it. And
Yeah.
as we're speaking, I do want to let everybody know if you didn't see my post about it, whether on Twix or on Facebook. We are coming to you live from the Maria Apicella Studios. I did, change the name of the studios in honor of my grandmother that I lost, last week. She's the one that got me into wrestling. She would, I remember back in 1989 or 88 when I had my kidney removed. I was in a children's hospital over this in December, and she would come up and we would watch Saturday Night's Main Event on NBC.
Oh.
Um, and it's like I was living there with her for a while. We watched Monday Night Raw every Monday. She would come home from work at the restaurant she worked at or that she owned. And we'd watch Monday Night Raw, and she would get so and she loved The Rock, when The Rock came out. She loved The Rock. She loved Jimmy Superfly Snuka. She got to meet a lot of them that came, to her restaurant after wrestling at the New Haven Coliseum or the New Haven Arena.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, in honor of her memory, I did name our studios as Maria Apicella Studios um, because she had that impact on my life.
I mean, a mainstay on the wall here, my granny. She was also a huge supporter of wrestling. She, big old, like she's from Texas, right? And
Yeah,
so she would have all these stories of like all the local shows, Moondog, Maine coming through, and the Brainbusters and all that.
yeah,
She had a family moving out to California when she was really young, but maintained that wrestling fandom through her grandkids because she really like supported our enjoyment of wrestling.
yeah.
And like I said, she was the one that got the WrestleMania ticket and took us out to WrestleMania 19 in Seattle. When I got my little wrestling career going, she was at as many shows as she could possibly attend.
Nice.
Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's a family thing, It's
It-
something that could bond families together. It's definitely things that bond friends together. I
yeah.
wouldn't have had the friends that I had growing up if it wasn't for our mutual love of wrestling. And
Yep.
so I think that that's something help that would help somebody understand why wrestling is important to people if they
Yeah.
don't understand why wrestling is important to people. Because
Well,
it is a very social thing.
it's a very social thing, but it's also a very generational thing.
Hmm.
Because if you look at, and here's another similarity with soap operas in that let's say you're watching current General Hospital now. You've got the veterans on, like, whether it's Sonny or Laura or Lucy and Scott or
Hmm.
the people that have been there from the 80s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and then you have the newer characters on. So, you've got the draw for the older fan base, and then you've got the
Hmm.
younger fan base in there. It's the same thing with wrestling when you have um, you know, a lot of the legends, or as we look at them as legends, but they were big during our parents' or grandparents' time.
Yeah. Well,
I look at
shoot,
legends from
I'm
my
getting so
time.
old that they were big during my time, and now
Yeah,
they're the big grand return.
yes.
Like back when like uh, I have these experiences where like my grandma would turn something on and go, "Oh gosh, is the Rock and Roll Express still out there?" And then like now I turn it on and I'm like, "Oh my God, is that Randy Orton?
Yeah.
Like what is he still doing in there?"
Yeah. No, it's true. And for your information, the Rock and Roll Express is still going out there.
Oh my God.
Um, but no, you're exactly right. And it's like I got the pleasure of, I want to say it was 5 or 6 years ago. Um, WWE had come just a live event house show at in Bridgeport, and it happened to be around my birthday in August. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get a group of people that might want to go and watch, and we're gonna go down. And I bought a ticket for my grandmother and took her down. And and I really wanted to go because this was at the time where Jericho was still in WWE, but he'd only come back to do house shows. So it wasn't
Okay.
even he wasn't on Raw, wasn't on SmackDown. It was just for live events. And so I got the tickets and I got to bring my grandmother down and bring her to a wrestling event. And she loved it. I brought her to meet Hulk Hogan when he came, to a bookstore after he put out his first autobiography. Uh,
Okay.
we got him signed. And it was just so cute how watching her interact, because she was able to say, "Hey, do you remember so and so from the New Haven arena, or this doctor from the area?" And
Yeah.
whether he remembered or not, he still said, "Oh yeah, those was a long time ago."
Hmm.
So it's just it's a
Well, that's
generation
an awesome moment. Yeah,
for
it's
better
like I
thing.
said, it's social. It's about the memories that you form with other people, not necessarily the memories of the events that you're watching on the screen.
Exactly right. All right. Well, I think we're gonna take off. I know that's almost gonna be your dinner time over on the
Yeah,
West
I
Coast.
promised James Lott Jr. I'd pop onto his Zoom here too, so I gotta go like quickly throw something in my head hole and get going on that.
All right. Well, have fun with James, and you know, definitely check out 10th Floor podcasts on Sunday. That's why we took Monday nights for Suds News, because we didn't want to compete with James and the 10th Floor, and everybody's on Sundays. We do Monday.
Everybody is on Sunday. Like you'd have to be on it Sunday at like 7 p.m. for you to
Right.
not share a time slot with somebody talking about soap operas on Sunday. I,
Exactly.
I, I'm I'm super lucky that we got started when we did and stole that 11 a.m. because that was the last hour that was remaining.
That's but I want to thank everybody for watching. Again, hit that like button, subscribe, get notified. Your mom said, "Good show, you two." Um, Thank you very much, Mom and Cat. But you know, have fun. Remember, we are an official affiliate for the WWE shop. Go to sudsandsquaredcircle.com/wrestling merch. Gives you the affiliate code and the link there. Also follow 10th Floor on Twix and all the other social media platforms at 10th Floor GH for
Yeah, so
Twix.
that's Twitter and Instagram at 10th Floor GH. Just Google 10th Floor Podcasts. I think we're pretty much the thing that comes up when you Google that phrase now. We go 4 years strong with that branding. I think Google has finally figured out who we are. And that's probably going to be your easiest way. We also have a link tree on our Twix description. I think it's on our YouTube description as well. That'll help you navigate around if you're looking for audio episodes or anything else. I haven't added a link to it in probably 3 months. I probably should, just so you know the speed that way I'm going here when it comes
Yeah.
to to working with this stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, it's been great. Great talking to you. We'll do it again. Maybe we'll do a watch along next time. Because that Firefly Funhouse thing was
That was a good
watch
time.
along we did was great. But next time we'll get together soon. But thank you for watching. And again, if you're in the podcast feed, give us a 5-star Apple review, or Spotify or anywhere else you listen to your podcast. All right, Matt, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your time on the Zoom with James Law Jr. And we will see you again soon on Squared Circle News. Have a